was mostly giving myself an introduction there. Welcome, everybody. I am today going to be presenting on giving quality evaluations. I will be making a future iteration of this presentation in slides and so on, but I did not get a chance to prepare slides in advance of this. So this time around, you'll either have to watch my video or take notes or wait until I actually get slides and another video out. So evaluations, you know, the pie format of Toastmasters meetings, the prepared speeches, the impromptu speaking, and the evaluation portion. The evaluation portion is a very important part of Toastmasters. We learn to be a better speaker by listening to other members and giving feedback. The closest thing to a teacher is an evaluator. So we give immediate feedback on what we did, how we did well, where we can improve, and so on. And that's why you value evaluations. But by giving evaluations, you not only help the speaker, you also help audience members learn, and more importantly, you help yourself. So giving evaluations, it's a real world skill as well. You give evaluations every day. You give feedback in your professional life, in your personal life. Do you work with other people? Do you tell Joe that he should have maybe done this report a little differently, but you like his numbers? Do you tell your kids that was very good the way you did the dishes, but maybe next time you could not throw them in the sink so hard? Things like that. Those are regular evaluations that you're doing on a daily basis. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to encourage people to work on their skills. And in Toastmasters' case, it's on their presentation skills. And you are helping them improve their presentation skills. So there's a couple of different terms that they use for this. One of them's the hamburger style. And with that, I'll share the infographic that you're going to sit and look at this whole time, because that is the only piece of graphic I have. So this is a mix of giving positive feedback, giving areas for improvement, and then following up with additional positive improvement. Some older Toastmasters clubs refer to it as the commend, recommend, commend, the CRC model. So you want to sandwich any suggestions for improvement in the middle of it. You don't want to bombard people with negative feedback. And suggestions for improvement are not negative feedback necessarily, but it is just giving negative feedback is an invalid way to try to get people to change their behavior. You want demonstrations of what they can do to make it better, but you also want to praise. So you are not putting down their speech, you are encouraging them to grow their speech. So ever so slight encouragement can help move their behavior more so than just giving a lot of negative feedback. So with evaluations, you always give positive feedback. You do not use negative terminology. You identify the skills that the speaker has that they can use again and again and again. Hey, Bob, I thought this was great. I think in your next speech, you should also do this thing. You recommend ways to improve the existing skills. Your eye contact was good, but I kept seeing you look to the side to your notes. So keep your eye contact on the green dot in the middle of your Zoom window. You recommend ways to overcome current weaknesses. You know, you kind of faded out a little bit as you were going on in your speech, and, you know, maybe stop and take a breath, stop and take a drink of water, get your tone back and move on. We do not give negative feedback. I just called that out. Negative feedback, no. You never want to use disparaging language towards people's speech, even if it's a bad speech. You figure out ways to get them to use this to grow. You don't call out errors. You just look for opportunities for improvement. Oops, you accidentally shared your personal chat and some offensive message came up. Well, it was very good that you were trying to share content on your screen, but next time, test this first, make sure that you have everything in order before you start sharing your screen. Don't accidentally show things that you shouldn't, but don't call it out as a you did bad. So we do not use negative words like criticism or error or pick on. The most effective help is identifying the current skills that can be improved upon. So recommend improvements that are things that they're already doing. So recommend just very small changes that can lead to improvement, and explain why you're making the recommendation. It engages your audience better when you're looking dead on the camera instead of looking to the side. They think you're trying to think, or you don't know what you're talking about if you're looking to the side, things like that. And you can explain and demonstrate how best to use this, to use the materials that were provided to them. So Toastmasters come in looking to improve their speaking skills, but they're also looking at how to improve their listening skills and how to improve their co-working skills, basically. So you don't want to make a speech evaluation perfect. The best speaker in the world, you can probably find a suggestion for them. You can give them a glowing recommendation, but that doesn't help anybody. You need to offer room for improvement, or else you did not actually give them a valid evaluation. So making a suggestion for improvement to a fantastic speaker, that requires some braveness on your part. You feel like you might not be up to par with that speaker, but if you are able to offer them a suggestion from your heart, detailed what you think they could do better at, then you are giving them a valid evaluation. Things like, I can find no recommendations for this speaker, not valid. Like, you may think they are fantastic and exceeds expectations. They still have room for improvement. And in a good evaluation, you want to give your points at least one good, a recommendation for improvement, and at least another good. But you also want to treat it like a regular speech. You want to start it out saying, I have 3 things that I'm going to tell you about. 2 areas where you were great, 1 area for recommendation. And then at the end, you want to wrap it up like you would a regular speech. You want to summarize it at the very end, like you would in any other speech. I told you 3 things. Those 3 things are these. And this is how we go about improving your speaking moving forward. It's recommended that you keep your strongest positive for the very end. Leave them on a high note. And then I've got some more content here. So one thing that you can do is, as you're breaking it down and offering suggestions, is share the what, the how, and the why. For example, you have good vocal variety. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean everything to someone. So what? You have good vocal variety. How? You raised your voice and spoke faster at exciting parts of your speech, and then you slowed down and lowered your voice during the serious moments. Why? When you do this, it breaks the patterns and it holds people's attention. Otherwise, the speech just drones on and on. That's something where you can offer suggestions for vocal variety. Got another example here. So the what, I feel that you could have stronger eye contact. How? I noticed that you spent a lot of time looking to the side of the audience. Can't blame you. There are beautiful ladies there. I stole these examples. So the audience, why? The audience sitting on the other side may feel neglected. What? I would suggest that you spread your gaze across the whole auditorium or across all your Zoom boxes. How? Look at each person as long as you can to make a point. It could be 1 second, could be 5 seconds. You could be looking up and down the strip of Zoom participants and just acknowledging that there are more than one people here. And why? By doing so, you've made a stronger connection with the entire audience. When you're giving a recommendation, you need to point them out. First, you did it, why it's not good, what they can do, how you can do it better. So those are a couple of examples of using the what, how, and why to break down what you're saying as a suggestion for them in their speech to make it actually mean something to them. The other thing you want to do is evaluate the speech, not the speaker. You never are evaluating the speaker. You are evaluating the content they are delivering to you. So you want to look at the speech structure, the speech value, the speech logic, the project objectives from Pathways, and their delivery. You do not want to deliver feedback based on your opinion of the speaker or your feelings about the speaker. You didn't like the speaker, his speech sucks. They're pretty or handsome, you give them more positive remarks. They dress well, you give them an extra point. No, that is not how you should do an evaluation. You also don't want to do evaluations based on your opinions on the speech subject. For example, if you don't agree in global warming and this person does this great speech on global warming and you don't agree with them, don't mark them down because the content does not hold true with your standards. So you want, as I mentioned, speech logic is something important to consider as well. You're grading on not just the speech delivery, but you're also making sure that what they are delivering to you is valid and makes sense. Table topics doesn't count. You can talk and whatever, as long as you got some words out, then you did your job. But a prepared speech is something where you want someone to actually relay a story that's prepared. So you've got two different areas to watch here. So on the delivery side, you can comment on the vocal variety, the pauses, the body language, gestures, eye contact, energy, slides, props, etc. The audience engagement, making sure that they're actually interacting with the audience. But then the speech logic. You want to pay attention. Does this story make sense as you're listening to it? Does this message that they're relaying, does it wrap up? Does it, if it's a persuasive speech, is it ending in a call to action? Does it leave you feeling like you've actually been given something? If there's a certain structure they're following, you want to be able to acknowledge that. If they're using humor, you want to note that they're doing that. If they're presenting data, or they're trying for relatability, all of these are various categories of speeches you can do in various pathways. Topic selection, speech purpose, those things come up, like, was this speech relevant to the audience? Those are things that you want to be aware of. So an easy way to do this is to basically have a cheat sheet of the things you want to watch for. One of the easiest cheat sheets is download the evaluation form and keep track of the items there. They usually call out the vocal variety, the speech relevance, the audience comfort level, etc. Use those as cheat sheets. Be very familiar with that series of them. Like, I know I can just mark down on my page vocal. Great. And I know that I can translate that in on the fly because I've given enough evaluations to make that kind of a norm for me. But if you practice these things, you'll be able to more quickly draw on those as you're trying to come up with your 2 to 3 minutes of feedback for someone who's just given a speech. So I've called this out before. Don't always give a perfect score, because if you don't offer suggestions for improvement, you're not helping them. You've listened to their speech, you should have an option for improvement. So this is a problem that a lot of new evaluators have, is that they go, this person is great, I don't know what to say about them. Well, I called out 2 areas you can watch. You can comment on their delivery, or you can comment on, yeah, your speech didn't quite make sense. You know, you probably should drop that one story and put in a different story if you have it. Or something like, you didn't give a strong enough call to action, and you should maybe hype it up a little bit and do some vocal variety and some enthusiasm and sell that story. Things like that. If you're jumping around in the story, maybe call that out as an area for improvement. If you note that they have a really bad habit, we called this a lip smack in one of my other Toastmasters meetings. They start talking, they click. And we started counting those like we did for the ah counter, because that is a very distracting thing if every other word out of their mouth sounds like they're smacking their lips together. Those sort of things you can watch for. And then the other one is, don't only offer suggestions for improvement, always compliment. Just think in terms of however bad they might be right now, you're making them better. So an evaluation, a bad evaluation could turn somebody totally off of Toastmasters, and you don't want to do that. If you're really struggling to find things that are complimentary to say about it, think about the fact that they got up on stage or they got in front of a camera and gave a speech. Regardless of how bad it is, they had the courage to get there and do that speech. And don't forget, the audience is learning as well. So you are being an example as well by being positive to the speaker, regardless of the quality of the speech. And here's another one. Be tactful with your words. Don't say you have weak eye contact. Say, I feel that your eye contact can be stronger. You're monotonous. You should say, I feel that you should add some more vocal variety to your voice. At the exciting parts of your speeches, you should raise your voice and talk with more hand gestures. Another tactful way is to drop the buts and replace them with ands. So as soon as you say, you did this, but this, they stop listening to the first part and only wait for the second part. What you want to do instead is, your speech is great, but has a weak conclusion, should be, your speech is great, and it would be even better if you could remember both. You never should use should or must. An evaluation is your opinion. No one's opinion is entirely correct. That would be a fact. So there's no right or wrong, just your feelings. An evaluation, you want to call out that an evaluation is something that you are giving as feedback. It is only your own opinion. So instead of saying you should do this, you should say, I feel that you could do this, or my suggestion is to do this. And as well, there is no must or never. There's no absolutes in speaking. So don't tell them never do this. You let them, you use the words that are softer than that, and you say, these are my suggestions for you to not do that, please. And as I said, you're speaking from your own opinion. You are not speaking even from the other members of your club's opinions. You are only speaking of your own. We actually saw this in our meeting with one of our other clubs last week. Is someone thought that someone was being too kindergarten-ish in the way that they were presenting, and I thought it was great. So everybody in a meeting can have absolutely differing opinions of how someone has done their speech. So you might like their animated gestures. Somebody else might not like their animated gestures. Somebody might think that they look like they're doing jumping jacks when they're not actually doing jumping jacks. So you want to call it out as, I specifically liked the way you were using your hand gestures. And things like, as well, when you're offering suggestions, my suggestion is, or my opinion is that you should do this. My suggestion is to do this. And don't say things like everyone thinks, or we all feel that, because unless you've gone off to the side and done a collaborative evaluation and are presenting it as a group, no, it's just you. Another one to call out, don't repeat the speaker's speech in your evaluation. You can call out the areas, I liked when you were telling the story about this. You don't tell their whole story again, because that just gets tedious and people kind of use it as a stalling mechanism, use it to suck up some of their evaluation time. Don't do that. It just, it weakens the message you're trying to relay. You can relate some of their speech, but don't repeat large chunks of it. If there was particular language you enjoyed in it, definitely call that out, because that is something where you're commending their speech for quality material. The other one to keep in mind And I called this out as well. Get the evaluation form from the speaker in advance because it gives you that extra cheat sheet. It tells you what the speech objective should be and lets you do a lot of this guidance on the speech formatting and work from there. So you can call out that this was a speech on managing a difficult audience. If you've read the materials in advance, you know that the person giving that presentation is intending for people to harass them during the speech, and how they manage it during that speech. All of that is part of the stuff you're scoring on for that particular Pathways project. Definitely make sure to reach out and get those if they're not already provided by Free Toast Host and the setup in there. The other thing is to reach out to the speaker in advance and ask what they're hoping to get out of the speech, what they're hoping to deliver, any particular areas you should watch for, etc. For example, when I ask for an evaluation of myself, I say, please call me on using the word so excessively, because I use it as a step. It's not even a crutch. I'm going to start every sentence with so. So if I call myself out in advance, then that gets me a more valuable evaluation for myself. Another thing is to evaluate based on the speaker's level. If you have a brand new Toastmaster who's coming in and doing their icebreaker, I want you to be extremely enthusiastic about how well they did a good job. You want to encourage them. You want them to continue to be Toastmasters. You want to point out all of the strengths that they gave in this. And like I said, even if it's not a great speech, the fact that they got up and gave their first speech is a very commendable act. So if they look confident, call them out and say, you were confident. That was wonderful. If you think that they just were reading off a piece of paper and were monotone and boring, well, they haven't yet learned the art and skills of vocal variety. Call out that your speech was well organized, and I look forward to you moving away from using your crutch of having your notes in ahead of you. So all of these things are areas where you can help encourage new Toastmasters. And then on the flip side, if you're, as I said, watching for the speaker's level, if you know that somebody's a DTM and they have spoken so many times, and this is one of the ones that you would feel challenged to give an evaluation to, well, think about the possible blind spots they might have about their own speaking. Like I said, the lip smack, or like they start flapping their hands when they get excited instead of using focused gestures. All of those things are things that you should pay attention to as an evaluator. And in an ideal world, you'd be giving them great feedback that they didn't even necessarily notice themselves. And I called this out as well. Make sure that your evaluation is structured like a speech. Say what you're going to say. That's your opening. Make your points, those being at least the 3 points: the positive feedback, the suggestions, and the other positive feedback, ending with the most positive feedback. And then end it with a conclusion. I told you these 3 things. Make sure it's structured like a regular speech, and you are directing it to the speaker. Another one to call out is don't make recommendations about things they can't change. Don't tell them they need to work on their accent. Don't tell them they should change their hair. Don't tell them to change their clothes unless it's a costume. You are evaluating the speech and not the speaker. Remember, some people might have nervous tics and things like that that are not things that they can change, and you should not point those out in an evaluation. And one last item. Humor is always good as long as you know to watch what you're joking about. If you have things that you can lighten an evaluation with by interjecting some humor into the mix, then that always eases the any discomfort somebody might get for getting evaluated. Evaluations shouldn't be scary. They should be a useful learning tool for both parties and the audience as well. So if you can crack a joke in there, that is always taken, that should be taken kindly. If you crack an awkward joke in there, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. So you want to have a collection of stock phrases that you might want to use to start an evaluation, just in case you're having total writer's block and you want to be able to give a good evaluation, things like that. Well, this picture, or they say a picture paints 1,000 words. Well, the speech can paint 1,000 pictures. Or your speech enlightened our minds, enlivened our hearts, and enraptured our souls. Well, let me put on my creative lenses to evaluate your speech. Your story was remarkable, rejuvenating, and your message was resounding. What an exciting story you had for us today. Things like that. And then one last thing I'm going to offer here, and this is a suggestion to go watch other speeches. When I first started as a Toastmaster and learned the joys of counting, I watched Chelsea Clinton, when her mom was running for office, give a speech, and I cringed the whole time. She had so many ums, so many ahs, so many filler words. It was unbearable. And that is one thing that you can do, is you can watch public speakers, you can watch people on TV, you can go back and find archives of old Toastmasters speeches, watch varying levels of it, and basically work through giving an evaluation of it. You can talk to yourself on you can record it and learn from seeing all these other speakers. And the more you do it, the more it'll be second nature to you and make it much easier for you. So that's what I had there. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment that I have heard when somebody speaks and they say, well, you never say thank you because we are thankful for you as a speaker. And this is I hear it all the time. So what do you recommend to say instead?
To say, in terms of, I'm not quite sure I get the thank you, like, thank you for giving us a speech, or?
Right.
Oh, okay. I hadn't been told not to do that, but I could see why you wouldn't necessarily want to do that. I'm thinking things like, I appreciate the insight you gave us here on this speech that you gave us, or we welcome that you entertained us this evening, or any of those things. That the thank you is a little bit cliche. So find an alternate way to say effectively your appreciation. Does anybody have anything else? And I realized right after I told you all that you shouldn't use should and never, I started using it it turned into my filler words. Power of suggestion. What's up, Rohan? I saw your hand.
Hi, Heather. So, what what is the generally trend you follow? Like, do you fill those forms of scale, right? Clarity, vocal variety, and all
Mhm.
after giving your evaluation, or like in the end we have a dedicated section where the evaluator speaks. Do you fill those forms before it or after it?
I do a mix of that, honestly. The same way I called out having a checklist, like I keep a scratch paper, digital scratch paper, and I basically write out the 3 sections that you excelled at, you could improve by, or you could challenge yourself by. Call out those, like fill in notes as you go along watching the speaker, and then those I think it's 8 different questions where you're ranking 1 through 5. It's the vocal variety, the eye contact, the gestures, the comfort level with the audience. I have those and I just have my notes and I have like 1 through 5 and I throw numbers down there so that I know if there's something specific I want to call out. If I think your vocal variety was stellar because you just made us all feel super excited when you got to the exciting part of your speech, then I would call out vocal variety and I'd put a 5 and I'd make a couple of notes there. I usually don't fill in the form until it's time to hand them back to the speaker. Like I usually send those out a couple days later. Some don't require it, and my cat is rolling over right here. Some people don't require it. It's nice to give it to the speaker so they have a written record of what you said there and you can kind of refine it later. It is entirely up to you. It's personal preference whether you would like to do that in advance of doing your evaluation. A lot of times it's not enjoyable to fight with a PDF while you're trying to get your 2 to 3 minutes put together during the time of table topics. So I usually do it after the fact.
Okay, got it. And other thing is, for specific speeches like dealing with a difficult audience, who sets up the audience? Like, I mean, because somebody needs to communicate to the audience, right? That you need to be difficult. So.
Yep. Had you already joined, Rohan, when Johnny did hers or not? Okay.
No.
So I've done that speech. Johnny's done that speech. We share the materials. There is a list that's like, here's the 8 different interrupter roles that people can sign up for. And you kind of prepare your audience for what you're going to do. And they pick their roles and they try to be as disruptive as possible. And the speaker, that their goal is to get them back on track and be able to get their presentation out of their mouth, which is a challenge to do because
when I did mine, they threw me into a breakout room by myself and then they all picked their roles and then they brought me back. So I wasn't aware of who was going to be what. That was a riveting Pokemon speech you missed, by the way.
But yeah, it's again up to the speaker. The speaker should usually communicate that to the vice president of education, who can help collaborate to get all of these things together in preparation for that speech. But the evaluator, having that evaluation form in advance to know what you're evaluating on, because seeing that speech out of context would just be miserable for an evaluator, and for the output of the evaluation would be awkward as well. So anybody have any other questions? Okay, you can stop recording.